never gets mentioned, always gets runs. But Jadeja and Shardul Thakur, surprise, surprise, at the end, finishing things off clinically for India. In the studio, I've got Simon Dool and Joy Bhattacharya. Joy, sometimes you were a little upset that Shardul Thakur, who should have been taking singles, doing it nice and quietly, decides a 4, a 6 here. Why do we take it down to the last ball?
Exactly. He didn't take my advice. I kept saying, rotate the strike, give it to the guy on strike. And he just instead sat there and hit a 4 and then hit a 6. And, sometimes cricket is such a wonderful game that makes you an idiot out of everyone.
17 of 6 balls. And it was a good move because you could have seen Shami coming in, we could have seen Kuldeep Yadav. They're both decent, they could have hung around, but they just sent him out, probably knowing that he can do this.
Yeah, and I think that's the right move, isn't it? Shami can hold a bat, there's no problem there. Kuldeep Yadav can hold a bat. There's no issue with him being able to rotate the strike, or either of those two being able to rotate the strike. It was all about, okay, well, let's send Shardul Thakur out. He can play some big shots. If he comes off with 2, he only needs 2 boundaries and the game's done. The game is won. In the end, that's exactly what he did and took the pressure off Jadeja. And I think that may have been part of the message that Virat Kohli said when he walked out. And remember he stopped and had a little chat as they walked out. He might have said something like, listen, just play your shots. If you come off, it's done in 3 or 4 balls here. So play your shots and it certainly paid off. So, no, well done.
But the real question India answered was, and we asked it at the 35th over Combox, yes, we want Virat Kohli to be there at the end. Whole of India does. If he doesn't get it, is that going to be, can India actually do it? And the question was, well, more leaning towards no than yes. But with Jadeja and Shardul Thakur, they answered it.
I think they did. And I think we give definitely a lot of credit to Shardul Thakur because he, as he said, he must have had a mandate to go for it and said, if you get out, then we'll send a blocker and Jadeja will go the other end. Till then, you take the risk. But the point was, it was really set up by Jadeja. And Jadeja, I think, is one of the coolest hands in the business, and we underestimate the amount of runs he's got for CSK, many years back for Rajasthan Royals. He is a pressure player. And if you see the World Cup, you see any situation, he seems to come through when the pressure is high. He's just that kind of a guy. So just give him enough credit. I think that's a confidence that Virat had, that as long as Jadeja is still there, India has a chance.
You don't get triple hundreds in domestic cricket. By accident.
And that's the thing, isn't it? I think everybody's always talked about Jadeja's talent and his runs for Saurashtra in the Ranji Trophy and even in domestic 50-over competitions. But we haven't always seen the best of him. But maybe it's the pressure of being that all-rounder. Is he capable of batting 6 in a side? Is he good enough
he is.
To bat 6? Or, I know he's in at 7 at the moment. Is he good enough to bat 6? Is he good enough for India to play an all-rounder at 7? And go down that road? I don't know. Is it the fact that more responsibility brings out the better Ravi Jadeja with the bat? And maybe that's the case. And maybe all this time they've got it wrong having him at 8, and sometimes at 9 as well. So I don't know. But he's shown some good maturity in his last 10 games when he's had opportunities to finish it or to do the right thing. He's shown some very good maturity. Even in that semi-final against New Zealand, he was superb in that game when a lot fell over. So the flip side of that is that I think there's some pretty poor options taken by some of the more established batsmen. When you get in, you've got to make sure you go through and win the game, or you can't be getting out like Kedar Jadhav tonight. That was awful.
Yeah, played the wrong line.
Yeah, that certainly was. That they will look back at that, but I think once you want to just savor a victory, celebrate a victory, you will tide over those later. But just quickly from the West Indies point of view, when Virat Kohli got out, did they miss a trick? Could they have sort of gone for the jugular a bit more?
I think they held back a bit, but then again, remember those 2 boundaries happened almost immediately. You had the 4 out there, through cover, and then you had 2 extra cover, and then you had the 6. And that really changed the equation. You see, once the equation, they were content to hang back as long as the rate was 8, 9. But those 2 suddenly made the rate come to 7, 7.5, 6.5. And then it's almost a runner ball and the occasional risk. And that those 2 boundaries took the risk out of it. And yeah, you can look at the West Indian bowling and say, see, that 6 could have come from anywhere. It wasn't a bad ball at all. And
it should have gone straight up.
Yeah, I thought it was up.
It was top edge that went for 6, and that's the issue nowadays with pace on the ball. Obviously the skiddy nature of the surface, a little bit of dew around. The 4 was a lovely shot. Give it to Shardul Thakur, but the 6 was a rank top edge. Yeah. You're sitting there going, oh, it's the baddest game. It's the baddest game.
But I think to be fair, overall, the good thing is that no one can point to the dew and say that caused the result as such. It was there, but it wasn't there to the extent they were not bowling with a bar of soap.
No, they weren't
Wettish
bowling with the
ball.
bar of soap, and actually they bought back Harry Pereira for an over, if you remember. It went for 10. I don't think it was conclusive either way, but at that, bringing him back around the 39th, 40th
Showed that
over
it was
showed that
grippable.
it wasn't so bad at all. Yeah,
And I think that the simple fact that the whole series was a good contest.
yeah, it was an excellent call.
Like the West Indies have shown enough for me to say they're a force. If they can get things right, and we talked about it earlier, Brandon King maybe at the opening role, and their bowlers have got. I really like Alzari Joseph. I think he's coming along leaps and bounds. Kemo Paul has proven to be a genuine all-rounder. Of the bowling unit, probably Jason Holder had the worst series. To be fair, it was his first wicket today in the one-day series. He still went for 60s. He probably had the worst series of any of the bowlers. This is a good side. This is a side that tested India properly tonight after putting runs on the board. So I've actually enjoyed it. I've enjoyed watching their style of play, and if they can find that style and continue to grow that style, I think they're certainly a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, if you look at the innings progressions, really it was a tale of two halves almost. Well, not literally half if you're a mathematician. 30 plus 20 when they were batting, 30 plus 20 even when they were bowling. Have a look at the West Indies innings, what really happened between 31 to 40 and then 41 to 50. The difference again coming, India had established a little bit more. They didn't have that 26 for 2 type period. So therefore, they were never behind.
No, again, you look at this match and you say, Ravindra Jadeja, but what is it? 215 of the 316 that we had to score came from your top 3 batsmen. So again, the bulk of the runs was delivered by them. I mean, it's a different matter that Jadeja had to finish it. But every time India does well, it's also because your top order, without fuss, 8 times out of 10, the top 3 go and give you 150, 200 odd runs. And that's the secret of your success. That's the secret of India's consistency in this format. It's just the top 3 always performing, almost always performing.
And we talked about the stat between Rahul and Rohit Sharma. Every time they cross 30, it gets to 3 figures. And once again, have a look at this list of ODI 100 partnerships. Started with that one in against Pakistan, and now yet again, they've converted it to a big one.
What have they had? 10 opening stands now. 5 below 30 and 5 above 30, which have all been well in excess of 122. It's phenomenal. And as I say, one of those 2 should have gone on. Yes, you can look at them and say, okay, well, a couple of incidents there where if one of us gets 100, it's an easy victory. It's a comfortable victory. So they'll be disappointed within themselves, and they should be with that. But when they put that 30 together, you just lock them in for 100. There it is, done. 100 on the board. Thanks very much.
And of course, with Virat Kohli, we did sort of mention it at the start. He had a horrendous record at Cuttack, just the reverse of what he had at Vizag. And the result was the opposite. He had a great record at Vizag, first ball dark. Today he comes into a ground where he just hadn't ticked the boxes. And typical of Virat Kohli, he would have told himself, look, is there a place where I haven't scored runs? Let me fix it.
Yeah, and this is not your classical Virat innings. This is a innings in which he's never quite got going. Got a couple of strokes that looked good, but otherwise he ran hard and he did the hard yards. And these are the innings that define batsmen like Virat Kohli. There are days that Virat Kohli will look like God and he'll get the runs. This is the kind of day where he looked like nothing. But you go back, you see that 80 odd runs, you see that strike rate of 104, and you say he's battled through it. And great players basically give you runs even when they look completely out of form.
Ugly runs, they call them.
Ugly runs.
Ugly runs.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that is the key. You're spot on. I mean, it wasn't a fluent Kohli type innings, but he just gets the job done. And that was it was a tired shot to get out too, I think, wasn't it? It was just, he just looked like maybe he was a little bit exhausted because he had run so hard because he wasn't finding the middle of the bat consistently. He'd run so hard, it just looked like a bit of a tired shot to get out as well.
36 of boundaries, which is not at all, I mean, Virat hits so much more, not a single 6. That's not his kind of innings. So, yeah, and I remember even when Rohit, took out his helmet, the amount of, it was the moisture out there, it was hot. These were difficult conditions to bat in.
And when you're the captain, that's the important stuff. I mean, that's what your team sees. The team sees when you're struggling, but you still produce the goods. And when you're the skipper, and that's the sort of skipper and the leader that he is, that the team looking around going, geez, Virat's struggling. I mean, it's not easy, but just look at how he's fighting through. Look how he's still putting a score on the board when he knows that it's not easy and he knows he's not at his best. So that's what you take from that sort of innings from him.
And of course, we did tell you that the venue may not have been great for Virat Kohli till today, but for Team India, it has been a kotoko or a fortress.
Kotoko means fortress, absolutely. Just look at that record out there. And I think also, they get crowd support all over the country, but it's particularly enjoyable to watch crowd support in smaller places like Cuttack and Vizag because they don't get that many games, and the whole city comes behind it. It's a big social occasion. They'll talk about it for the rest of the year. That India match where Virat was there and scored 80. And it's fantastic. I think it's great for cricket.
And that graphic tells you that you have to be a very, very, very good team.
Who are the,
India at Cuttack.
You know where that's coming from?
Oh, I didn't see.
Did you see the graphic?
I don't.
The only team to beat India at Cuttack?
I don't
New Zealand,
know.
of course.
I don't even know who it was. I just think you have to be a very. I just think you have to be a very good team to beat India.
I was wondering if he was
you
going
needed to sneak that in. You needed to sneak that in from somewhere.
Yes, I was wondering if he was going to do it or if we needed to get him into it, but Simon's always one step ahead. Yes, but yes, fabulous indeed for India to keep that record going.
I just don't like the way you behave. You're just ignoring this. You've been trying to ignore it from the beginning. Huh? What is this all about?
Guilty as charged. Guilty as charged. We were just so overwhelmed by India's victory that we had not acknowledged Simon's victory. Thank you, Joy, and apologies, Simon. There you are, sitting on the Maharaja, the My 11 Circle expert couch. This was, of course, what will India be at the 10-over mark? And I have to say, Joy, for the second time, it took one boundary that came a one ball too late.
Exactly. All they had to do was hit the boundary in the back last over. The 9.5, they patted 2 balls back. That was Rohit Sharma.
Rohit Sharma.
Yeah, it was good. Beautiful
Best
defence.
Defence that you've ever seen.
Beautiful defence from Rohit Sharma.
I have never seen you appreciate
those last, that ball, it was just there. It was just like boom, that was just so nice.
And I was just watching him go.
So impressed with
Unbelievable,
Rohit's defence on that occasion.
This is a mercenary attitude from your experts. I think you need to look at these experts very carefully.
I was going to say it's the kind of defence that we might have even seen from the bat of Simon Dool, but the last time he spoke about his batting, it was about hitting Saqlain Mushtaq's Dusra to all parts. You hit it for 6, did you?
That was in the car on the way home, Gus. We weren't supposed to bring that up. No, if you want me to tell the story, we were in Sharjah and we hadn't seen Saqlain Mushtaq much at all, or I hadn't certainly played against him. And I think we were 8 down for not many, and Pakistan were well and truly on top. And I came out to bat with Adam Parori was at the other end, and it might have been about 2nd or 3rd ball from Saqlain. I've just had a swipe at one down the ground and just middled it straight over long off for 6. And it was the end of the over. And Adam Parori walks down to me and he says, "How the beep did you pick the Dusra?" I said, "The what?" "I had no idea what the Dusra, I had no idea what the Dusra was." He said, "It's the one that goes the other way." I said, "Oh, no, I didn't see it." Not a clue.
That's the day Adam Parori decided to climb a mountain.
I think so.
Became a mountain.
Yeah, after that Everest, nothing can be more difficult than this. I can't watch him hit 6s the other day.
Well, let's go and again recap, sum up the series so far. As Simon mentioned, it has been a competitive series. First, it started with the 3 T20 internationals, India winning in Hyderabad, West Indies coming back well, and then in the decider, once again, it was Team India who do it time and time again when the chips are down. When the ODI series started in Chennai, what a good victory it was for the West Indies, Shimron Hetmeyer and company, and this time India had to win 2 on the trot, and they did it. Huge victory at Vizag, and then not the most massive of victories, but a clinical victory that finished at the end, finished off by Jadeja and Shardul Thakur. What about the overall results now we're seeing? Let's have a look at the years from 2007 to 2019. The record we talked about, impeccable, remains impeccable. The series between India and the West Indies. And this is the kind of domination West Indies will want to change sometime soon.
Absolutely. I think this shows more about India as a team rather than the talent of the two teams. Just India as a team, a more experienced side, and a side that's just far more used to winning, and a team that don't change around. The fact that they consistently win what you call key matches, when the teams are tied, it just shows you how much experience the team has, how much belief they have in themselves.
And one thing you'll notice over there were no whitewashes. No. There was one 2-0, but that was 2-0 with one match that had a no result. It was washed out. But every other game, the West Indies did win. So it's not that they were pushovers.
Yeah,
they were competing.
And even the graphic beforehand, it'll show you 8 wickets, it'll show you 107 runs and 4 wickets. But they were tighter than that. I mean, when you're chasing a score well in excess of 300, which was the Vizag one, you either go for